Jeremy, change is something that most of us don't find that easy, and businesses are no different to individuals in that respect. Change can be a challenge. What is it that makes change so difficult for organisations?
I think people just like the status quo, and it's as simple as that. And so an organisation, which is after all just made of people, also wants to maintain the status quo. It's easier to carry on doing reasonably successfully what you did yesterday than it is to try and think of a way to do it differently. The trouble is that that's not possible, that if you don't change, you just die. So we need to find a way in which organisations can see that certain aspects of the organisation remain constant, which I suggest are things like their values and their approach and their ethos, but their reaction to day-to-day events or their need to grow the business or respond to market trends can be as flexible as possible. So in fact, it's the flexibility which is the constant, the ability to respond to changes which is the constant, rather than seeing it as being a continual threat.
So in other words, you need to really make people believe that change is not only necessary, but actually part of almost the challenge, the fun, if you like, of the organisation.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of putting it. Change is part of the show. It's not an unwanted additional thing you have to deal with. It's actually the thing that needs the most attention, because particularly if businesses are in a state of transformation, even if it's voluntarily induced, managing that changing state is actually much harder than managing the business when it's at a stable state, because changing states by definition change. So they actually need to be managed differently from day to day. And that can be very difficult to achieve and often is the cause of businesses failing.
Jeremy, can you give me an example of a company that has had to face that challenge of change and perhaps has found it difficult but has then found a way to adapt?
Well, there's two categories of company immediately spring to mind. One would be retailers. High street retailers are in a curious position where at one level every day is the same and yet every day is different. And so they have to develop a whole methodology just to deal with handling permanent, perpetual change. The other group of companies, like some of my clients have been, are businesses in the IT sector, where simply the changes in technology require them to be continually on the ball, continually looking at finding new ways of doing things, exploiting new technology. So again, they're looking at absorbing the change process as being part of the business.
And presumably with large organisations particularly, it isn't just about the management saying, oh, well, let's change and kind of they accept the need for change. You've got to take the whole organisation with you.
You have. And I think the most successful way to do that is, as much as is possible, to actually put the responsibility for defining and implementing the change process on those people that are going to do the changing. Now, in large organisations, you can't have everybody driving the bus, but any change that is just perceived as being imposed from the top will be very difficult to implement, and it's unnecessarily difficult when, in fact, you could get a lot of goodwill on the part of your staff simply by involving them in what the change is and why it's needed.